This episode of the Midlife Men podcast contains an open and honest conversation about suicidal thoughts. We've chosen not to shy away from the reality of what that experience feels like because we believe that hearing it spoken about directly can help people feel less alone. If you're affected by what you hear, I'll be sharing some organisations at the end that you can reach out to right now. Welcome to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. Today, my guest is Graham Noble. He spent many years looking like a successful, functioning family man while privately struggling with his own mental health, to the point where he was convinced that taking his own life was not a question of if, but when. And this is a brutally honest conversation about how close he came and what changed and how he moved forward. So very welcome to you, Graham.
Hi, Philip.
So, Graham, let's start by looking at, on paper, your life looks successful, your career, married, you've got 5 children, functioning every day. So when did you start to realise that beneath all of that, something was not quite right?
I never thought I'd struggled with my mental health at all. I was always the guy that was pull yourself together and get over it and give yourself a slap and you'll be fine. But I think probably in the last couple of years, I've realised that I was struggling a lot longer than I realised I was. And I go back to probably in my late 20s when the pressure started to go up. I had my kids quite young. I'm not blaming the kids, first of all. None of this is their fault. But the pressure starts to pile on, right? So I remember probably in my late 20s, early 30s, where it became, when things got tough, there was like a little voice in the back of my head that went, there's always another option. There's always a way out. And I probably ignored it for way longer than I should have done. And then every time life got a bit more difficult, that voice got a little bit louder. I suppose that's the easiest way of saying it.
How were you, presumably you were masking then how you were feeling? So to the outside, really, did no one think anything was the matter? Were you just completely same old Graham?
No. It's just, I lived in a sales environment, and it was, you're going back to the early noughties. It was like, it wasn't the thing to do is to say to somebody, I'm struggling, or I'm having these thoughts and I don't understand them, and I'm not, I can't work through it. And I was surrounded by people that were full of energy, all the time, and you're expected to be full of energy. And I remember my now ex-wife saying to me one day when I was under a lot of stress and, your mortgage payments and I remember saying to her one day, you don't understand, you don't get it. And she looked at me and she went, I don't need to get it. Like, you'll fix it. You always do. And I thought, I've got no comeback to that. If that's what you think I am, if that's what you think I've got to do, then that's my job. She'd confirmed that we'd got this relationship where she did one thing and I did the other, and this was my job, and she's doing hers very well and I'm failing at mine. So I've got to get it on and done it. So you do put a cloak on and go, right, I can't tell anybody this because I'm failing.
So that was kind of exacerbating things, I guess, for you. And what sort of, in daily life, how were you, how was that manifesting, this kind of pressure? I mean, I think you talked about, drinking heavily. I mean, how did it come out? You must have had a bit of release.
Yeah, I mean, a normal working day for me consisted of an awful lot of travel. So an awful lot of time on my own. I'd spend evenings in hotels, and when you there's a degree of loneliness there as well, and you ring home and you need to have that conversation, and they're busy, and you don't want to burden somebody, or that you feel a guilt for burdening somebody else with how you feel, because time's so important to everybody, but you're sitting there alone. So one beer becomes 5 beers, 5 beers becomes 7 beers, and all of a sudden you feel like you can forget about it a little bit. You're not quite having the conversation with the person in the head. You just know the person's there, but you're not listening to it quite so much. So I started to rely on alcohol massively for a longer period of time than I recognise now it was a long period of time. At the time, it wasn't. And the volume just went up and up and up, and it was my way of coming out of a situation and putting myself into a different state. And it was incredibly dangerous as well, because the more I was doing that, the more I was pushing my family away. So I'd find excuses to go and drink. I'd find excuses to go and do something, and I'd put myself in an environment with other people that drank a lot, so as I could hide myself from the. It became well, I had to drink because I was with so and so. We're going out for dinner. So I've got to drink, haven't I? Because I'd be boring if I didn't. So I found myself doing that an awful lot. But all the time, these voices are in my head. And of course, with alcohol, it's great when you're drinking it. But then the following morning, the voices aren't just talking to you; they're shouting it. You're going like, basically, you're a fucking idiot. What have you done that for? You're a loser. You got to get on with it, and you have to deal with that, and you have to start to sort of manage those feelings twice as hard because you're dealing with last night's problem.
And of course, alcohol's a depressant.
Yeah, but
everyone thinks it's the opposite.
Yeah, but it's a joy at the time and a depression later. That's the problem. And I think that the more that went on, the more I relied on it. And then the more that I realized I was losing so much of the following day. And it just became this circle that continued to carry on, because you were then less efficient the following day, and dealing with the guilt from the day before and the guilt from the people around you. And it accumulated at one point to I would be drinking that heavily and trying to escape conversation with so many people that one day my children found me on the floor in the morning, and I'd passed out, and I'd obviously something had happened to me. I actually can't remember what had happened to me, and then the next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital, and I basically got told that I'd had some sort of episode where my brain had just said, no, you're done. And it just literally shut me down, and I'd got no movement in my body. And that came back eventually over sort of 48 hours where I could actually get movement back. And they just said, you've had an episode where you've just done too much. Your brain has just said, no, you're done. We're shutting you down. And that was a big turning point to me, to say that, hold on, my brain's got more control over me. Obviously my brain's got control over me, but it's got more control over me to shut me off than I think it has. But it also had the control over me to say, you're going to do away with yourself. There's an option here. There's this fork in the road that we were discussing the other day of, left is, okay, we'll carry on another day and we'll keep going. But right is, well, you could just turn it all off now. You could get away from all this pain that you're in. And alcohol always made me sort of go left, or I believed it did. It took me away from going right, when really it was pushing me more right than it was anything else.
Did you seek any help? Did you think, I need to go and see someone, this is getting a bit out of control? I know it was the early noughties, you're in a sales environment. I mean, I've worked in that similar environment. Was it just not an option? Was it not available? Did it not cross your mind?
No, it was something I was afraid of doing. And I think at the time, I think when you grow up at a time that we grew up, sorry, you are pushed to sort of believe, like, if you say you're not very well, you're a hypochondriac. It's like, you got a broken leg, well, stand up and you'll walk it off. And you have a bit of a mental space where if you think, I need to go and talk to somebody at the doctor's, you're instantly convincing yourself that what are you talking about? You don't need to go to the doctors to get and talk, just get on with it. So I didn't really seek any help until it was probably like 2015 that I went to go to the doctors. And it was funny because I thought about this after we spoke the other day, because I remember a conversation that I had with the doctor, and I went in and I think this is actually important for people that give advice and give prescriptions and manage people. I sat with my doctor and I let go. I was at my wit's end. everything was on top of me. The nasty divorce. I was fighting for my kids in court. It was a horrible state of affairs. And I remember turning around to the doctor, and she said, how bad do you feel? And I went, I'm done. I think I'm there. And she said, oof, don't say that to me. I'll have to section you. And I looked at her and I went, fuck, I can't be sectioned. I've got bills to pay. Do you know what I mean? If I'm sectioned, that's it. They'll know I'm mad. Like the insurance won't pay out. They'll know so I instantly retract. No, I'm not there. I'm just low. I'm just low. And I remember at the time thinking, shit, that could cause me so much more bother, because I was worried about everybody else in the situation than I was myself at that point in time. And you know what? Maybe I should have been sectioned. Maybe the best thing for me, and it would have brought forward the whole getting well, could have come from being sectioned. But because I was afraid of it, and because somebody gave me if you say this, I'm going to do that. But if you say that, I'll let you go. It was like, what was the show? Anyway, she prescribed me some medication, which I say this to everybody I speak to about this. Like, for me, they didn't work. It's not to say they don't work for everybody. Maybe I was just on the wrong ones. Maybe I'm shit at taking tablets and I didn't take them right, but they didn't work for me. My wife knew they wouldn't work for me because I'd got an addictive personality that when I do something, I do it to its nth degree. So I think she was concerned that it was going to be, he's on these for life. There's patches after I started taking those tablets that my wife and my children will laugh at me about now, because they'll tell me about things that happened and I have got no recollection of big chunks of time. I'm not talking about conversations. I'm talking about like literally weeks of time when they went, remember we went here, we did this, we did that. And I'm like, you must have done this with somebody else. I'm like, no, we were there with you. So it had this blocking effect on me. But it never took away the underlying thought that I've got option B. And that always stuck with me. It was, I think I came to the point of realizing I've got to fix this on my own. If I want to stay around, I've got to fix this on my own. And I had this incredible guilt of carrying the family. And I mean, without getting too morbid about it, I suppose I was at the stage where it was like, I'm planning it. And then I'm trying to plan it in a way that, well, who's going to find me? How are they going to find me? I don't want them upset when they find me. And I need to write them all letters. But then when I've committed to the letters, I'm definitely doing this. So I started writing letters. But then that letter is the hardest thing that I ever tried to put pen to paper in my life. It was incredibly hard. And again, I suppose that kept me here because I was thinking about their feelings and what was going to happen to them afterwards. I was telling you the other day that I was thinking about writing to my wife and trying to time it with the postman to be like, she needs to get this before they find me, but not late enough afterwards they find me, because then I need her not to say that I was in any way, shape or form depressed, because then she won't get the insurance. And, it was sick. It was sick in my own head. It was sick what I was doing. It was sick what I was doing to myself.
But that's why this conversation is so important, because you've taken what was an abstract, suicidal ideation, whatever you want to call it, into a plan, and this is not really talked about. There might be people listening to this who have felt the same. Still quite taboo to talk about this, and I think your experience with the doctor is a really interesting point to make, because suddenly, you're seeking help, but then you feel you have to retract and hold back. And is that helpful? I'm not saying it's not, but there's no easy way around it. So tell us about them, because people listening might relate to this. But what then? We talked about this left and right path. What took you onto the path that meant that you didn't actually decide to take your own life?
I think initially, and it's probably always been there. I mean, let's call this for what it is. I think when people have these feelings and they have these thoughts, that they're always in there somewhere. They're always in the back of your mind. And I think that somebody shouldn't feel that they're not fixed because they don't have the thoughts anymore. We're built in a way that we don't remember pain, and we generally don't remember the bad things. And I think when you have these thoughts periodically, everyone has a bad day, but I think one person's bad day who's never been this level of depressed is very different to a person's bad day who's had these thoughts, because they can pop up in your mind at any time. It's just how you learn to handle them, I think, more than anything. But my family was definitely the thing that kept me from going down the other path. I didn't talk about it openly. The kids were too young. When I talked to my wife, she'd cry. And I never liked seeing my wife cry, obviously. And it forces you to bottle it up. But they stopped me from going any further initially. And then I had to work out a way that I could carry on going and it not be just because of them. It had to be for me. And I'm always a big believer that you can't tell somebody when they're ready. They have to be ready. You have to be ready to receive help. You have to be ready to receive advice. You have to be ready to, if somebody tells you, you take these tablets, if you're not in that place to want to take them, you're not going to take them. If you do, you're not going to take them properly. And I don't believe they work if you have to be in a position to accept it. I'm sure there's a million doctors who would say I'm wrong there, but I've been there, so I'm a bit of an authority on it, to be honest. So the first stop was family, and then some particularly close friends that I did open up to, who I feel sorry for now because they had to handle it and didn't feel qualified to handle it. So they didn't know whether they were saying the right thing or the wrong thing, or, it was a lot of pressure on them, but it was just the ability to talk. That was the biggest thing, was to be able to get it off my chest and not be judged, because nobody wants to be judged and then, chastised for the way they feel and, maybe demonized at work or whatever. I've been fortunate enough that I've always worked for myself, so I've not had to worry about, what my boss would think, and if I'm taking time off, the risk it's always been on me. So I feel so sorry for people that have to deal with it in a life that they have to turn up at 9 and they have to do the job, and if they don't do the job, the pressure becomes even greater. I massively feel for those people, and finding a route to be able to talk to somebody and feel comfortable, it is definitely step one of the way out.
How did you select, if that's the right word? People listening to this might think, well, I couldn't, and I've got lots of mates, lots of friends, but I couldn't really talk to them about this. I mean, how did you select who you thought was the best people to share?
Do you know, at the time, it's impossible. At the time, it's impossible because you don't know. I've never been the person that's had like a million mates. I've never been that. I've never been the guy that's part of a football club and we all go drinking after we've played a game. That's not me. So I've always had quite a small circle, and I think people will pick up that are close to you. Generally speaking, I think they'll pick up when there's a change and a shift in you. And if somebody gives you that inch, take a mile. If somebody gives you are you okay? Then you run at it. You got to do it. But I think now knowing what I know, fucking shout loud. Because what you'll find is if you stood in a room with 20 people and went, I'm fucking struggling here, I'm on the edge, 19 people will turn away. I'm so sorry, I'm getting a bit. 19 people will turn away. One person will come up to you later on and go, I feel like that. Oh, I felt like that. And that's what you've got to do. It's having the courage to put your hands up and go, I'm in a shit spot.
And that's the point of this podcast, actually, is that, you're not alone as you think. And despite all the, the social conditioning and everything else we have as men, especially older men, you're not special as you think. There are other people that are going through the same thing, but are not talking about it either. So,
the bit that shocks you is it's how many. There's so many people that feel like this, and And the ironic thing is when you bring a group of people together, I think we're preconditioned to think, oh my, that'll be a fun party. You're all sitting around, yeah. But it actually becomes you get an immense sense of value by helping others, by giving something back. You all of a sudden feel better about yourself. I don't mean that in a sense of if somebody else's life is worse than yours, then I don't mean that, but I mean if you sit and you're in a room with somebody or three people or whatever, and you've got these stories that you can recant, some of them become laughable because it's like, fuck, I was drinking this much, but no, I was drinking this much, and it's like, oh, what a bunch of pricks we were for doing that. It's like there's a camaraderie behind it that you're still here, and it doesn't matter if you've only just started feeling like it, you're still here. So having that group of people, you actually become somebody that realizes you're not alone. There are other people that feel the same way. So you're not an alien. You're not broken. You're not different. You're actually the same as probably 50% of the blokes out there. And then you feel the need to support each other. And in supporting somebody else, you lift yourself up. And giving that something back and helping other people actually becomes something that makes you recover quicker. That's how I found it. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't the guy that stood in the bar and went, "Hey, I'm struggling," but I've definitely found that by helping other people, I've got something from it. And then my voice became in helping other people, not necessarily the depression, but helping other people in different situations. Somebody's turned around to me and gone, "Why are you doing this?" And I've said, "Well, I felt this like this. I want to do something for somebody else." And that's when they've turned around to me and gone, "Oh my God, I was there 5 years ago. I was there 10 years ago. I nearly took my life, or my dad took his life." It's just having the voice.
So it just needs to be part of the conversation that we all have, doesn't it? That you're not embarrassed or you're not, speak to the right people, of course, but, it should be something which is more normalized because so many of us have experiences, whether they're at the point where you're thinking about turning right or just, not feeling you're finding a way forward and struggling by yourself. So what did you do? You spoke to people, you realized, or your family and your children, kept you here. But was there anything you did, any decision you made or any change you made that then helped, get you to different place?
Yeah, I won't lie. For a while, I thought I was a schizophrenic because and I actually went to go and see somebody to see if I was a schizophrenic because the louder my voice got in saying I want to be here, the louder the other voice got in saying, no, you don't. So I started to question like my sanity a little bit. But it is a case of you do have to battle through. There is no quick fix for this, but you've just got to say, I want to be, I'm here for a reason. I want to be here. So if you don't feel you've got a reason, then go make a reason. And it doesn't matter whether it's having some form of target, which was my solution. I had to have something, a reason to be here for tomorrow, whether it be go and run a kilometre. Well, tomorrow I want to run 2. And next week I want to run 3. You have something that keeps you having to be here. And I know people always bang on about fitness and exercise and stuff. It 100% helps, but it doesn't help for everybody. My purpose came in the fact as to, I had a target with climbing Kilimanjaro. That was something I saw and I thought, you know what, I want to do that. It regressed me back to being a child because it was something I enjoyed doing when I was, I say child, but 17, 18, it was something I enjoyed doing, being outside, climbing stuff, being on mountains and stuff. Saw this poster one day and thought, I'm going to do that. And then proceeded to drag my family with me to do it as well. But then in the training, it gave me purpose. It gave me like a date in the future that I had to be here for. And then when I did that, I failed when I first did it, which I suppose in a way you could say, well, that's a good thing because then I booked it again to go back a second time and do it. So I had another date in the diary further down the road. And then I met these most amazing people that I looked at their lives and thought, what the fuck are you complaining about your life for? Like, you've got everything. You're like, you've literally got everything. And these people have got like nothing. And then I had an opportunity to help others. And then I built a business around helping others. And it's that mountain for me is, but you could use it as a metaphor if you want, but that mountain to me has been my recovery. You know, I went up at one person and came down at another. And I think if you can find something in life, be it climbing mountains, be it fixing a car, you know, be it having a focus on saying, I won't do it yet. I've got something to finish first. Then having a sense of achievement at the end of it generally outweighs your feeling of being depressed. Then you want to go and fix something else. You want to climb something else. You want to run a bit further. You want to do. It's all about. But for me, we said this. I'm not a therapist. I haven't got the answers. You know, but I think and it doesn't need to be about money. It doesn't need to be about if you've got enough money to do it. And somebody listening to this say, oh, it's all right for you because you can afford that. No, it can be literally anything. If you're stuck, I mean, I didn't leave my house for days and days and days at a time. I just didn't go outside. Just kept myself inside. Didn't want to face people. Didn't want to talk to people. If somebody came to the front door, the amount of times I could tell you that I hid upstairs and didn't answer the front door is just not funny. So if it's just a case of starting small, tomorrow I'm going to get to the end of the road. Tomorrow I'm going to talk to somebody. You know, and the following day I'm going to talk to two people. It's just anything that keeps you coming back. Doesn't need to be a massive goal to start with. It could just be something little. Because if you set the goal too big, you're destined to failure. Because like nobody does things first time, every time perfect. And if you're in a bad state in your mind, failure is not something that you need. Because that just solidifies the fact as to you just need to check out now because you crap at everything. You know, you're a bad dad, you're a bad husband, you're a bad person, you're whatever. So I think I hate the term baby steps. I fucking hate baby steps, but it's miniature goals. I think that's the way forward.
And do you think that, often men, especially older men, a lot of responsibility, they feel guilty about maybe making decisions for them, about doing something for themselves, they perceive it to be selfish or, how important is that? Because, I've spoken to a lot of men, and if you don't look after yourself, then you can't look after others.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's of a certain age group, with certainly men from probably 40 onwards, mid 30s onwards, you do fall into this situation when you've got a wife that there's blue jobs and there's green jobs and you do your jobs and she does her jobs. And there's plenty of women that struggle with mental health as well. It's not, uniquely men. But I think we carry a burden on our chest that we've got to provide. We go very caveman that we go and get the food. We put the roof over the head. You bring up the children and I do that and I do that. But we don't live in that world now. We live in a completely different world now. And that desire that we have to be the ultimate provider is actually a lot heavier than it used to be. And I think that a lot of men feel it and don't talk about it openly. And then in the background builds resentment because you start comparing what you're providing versus what somebody else is putting into the pot. You start resenting them. Marriages break down because of it. Arguments ensue. Then you lose the love, you lose the affection, and they essentially lose the care. I think when you have children, we designed that when a female has a child, that becomes her complete point of interest, as it should. We as men get forgotten. And again, this is no commentary on women in comparison. It's nothing to do with that. It's just the way it works. Like we do one thing and men and women do another, and we have different jobs and different roles. And when you compare the two together, we always think we get the raw end of the deal. We don't.
But we also grew up, men of our sort of age, if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, as a child, teenager, things were a bit different then, and now they're not. So we've grown up in and reached adulthood through that change. And there's no there's no kind of guidance, is there? So I think the reason a lot of men who are now in their 40s, 50s, 60s have struggled with adapting to that, because exactly as you've just described, I don't think anyone needs sympathy, but it is difficult, and it's not really discussed or acknowledged.
Well, it's without wanting to go all Andrew Tate. I do think men start to feel less valued because there is a feeling that if you were to say out loud how you felt, that you would be chastised for it, and it would be, women can do anything that men can do, and you're not needed, you're not needed, you're not needed. So when you feel less needed, and you feel you're doing something badly, even if you're not, but you feel you are, it just exacerbates the problem, and all of a sudden you just feel worse about yourself, and then you feel you can't talk about it more. You can't, because you sound like you are moaning about it. You sound like you are trying to create sympathy, and it's woe is me. But men need to get past the point of thinking that it's woe is me. If you are feeling like you want to take your life, you are going to ruin so many other people's lives because of taking your life. And you might feel alone, but you're not, because there's somebody that's going to miss you. There's somebody that's going to wake up and think, "What the fuck? Why didn't I listen? Why didn't I ask another question?" You're going to ruin so many more people's lives. So you've got to get past that feeling of, I can't say anything because somebody might think I'm moaning or tell me to pull myself together, and like get over the fact that, yes, we're the age we are, and we were built a certain way, and our parents told us to do one thing or another. It's a really difficult one to overcome, and I think we are of an age where it's difficult, but you've got to do it, because even if as selfishly as I stayed because I didn't want to I was worrying about everybody else and what they'd have to deal with. I'm now selfish to stay because I don't want them to go through it. It's like a switch that I've gone the other side of the fence. Does that make sense? Make
Yeah,
myself clear there.
you are. Yes, yeah. I think it is. It's a tricky topic, and one that I don't think anyone's really got the answers for. But I think your insights are going to be really valuable to a lot of people listening to this. I wanted to something we talked about actually in our prep call. You mentioned earlier that you kind of hid away from your family and your children, when you were drinking, etc. You talked about when you climbed Kilimanjaro with your family, that you kind of connected or reconnected and found, the joy in that. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about that.
Well, I'll be honest, it wasn't well received when I first booked it. So as much as like I dealt with depression in my own crazy way, and I did the lock myself in, and I did the take myself away, and I did burying myself in alcohol and eating too much, and all the things that are just absolutely stereotypical depression. I also did the other end of the spectrum where I'd do crazy things all the time, and there'd be daft stuff that would arrive at the house from Amazon that I'd bought whilst pissed the night before, and because we definitely needed that, didn't we? So the family was kind of always used to me doing silly stuff. I don't know whether they'd put two and two together, that it was like a coping mechanism. So when I booked Kilimanjaro, there was a lot of head shaking and a lot of, oh my God, what the fuck has he done now? But then in the planning of doing it, in the doing, it kind of forced you to do more stuff together as a family. So it brought more value as to thinking they do want me here. They actually enjoy my time in just the planning alone, and the getting ready for it, the training, and so on and so forth. But then what became massively important on the mountain was disconnecting from everything else, because you've not got a phone signal. You know, the kids can't sit on TikTok and Instagram all day. They you know, you can't answer your work emails or make your calls. It's kind of like a forced situation where you're either going to sit in silence or you're going to talk. But the nice thing about it was we spent so much time when you were walking that you were absolutely bloody exhausted, that you didn't talk, that you actually had something to talk about when you stopped. And over the course of the 7 to 8 days that we did it's like we just got to know each other again, and we talked a lot. And some of my kids are a little bit older; they're in their 20s, and they started work and university and whatnot. And you know what they're doing, but you don't know what they're doing because you're not the person they're talking to you about it. So all of a sudden, I'd forced myself into a position where I started to get to know my family again, and from being distant in a way that I didn't know I was being distant previously, I was now in a situation where I got to listen to them intently and got to know my kids again and my wife. Don't get me wrong, there weren't intimate conversations and deep stuff, but I think that was the nice thing. We just talk shit. We just talk normal. We weren't trying to save the world and reconstruct our marriage and reconstruct our relationships with each other. We just talk crap. And it was amazing. It was really, really was amazing. And we got out of it so much and became, we've always, I'd like to say we've always been a close family, but that definitely changed something and brought family back to the forefront of knowing that there's support there. So put it this way, if I'd have done this podcast 2 or 3 years ago, would I have told my children I'd done this podcast and to listen to it? The answer would have been no. They all know I'm doing this podcast, apart from my little one, for obvious reasons. They'll all listen to this podcast and they'll all listen to what I've got to say, because there's nothing in this podcast that they're going to go, oh my God, Dad, we never knew. They might not quite know the extent of it. I think I told you I'm not. This isn't a plug, obviously, but I've written a book for the climbing company, and I'll be completely honest with you, it was an SEO attempt at trying to just do whatever extra you needed to do to try and get. But in writing this book, it became really personal, and I wrote about why I climbed Kilimanjaro and the situation I was in and all this sort of stuff. And I handed the book to my wife to read, and she read it through, and she was like, I didn't know it was this bad. Like, why did you not tell me it was this bad? And I felt incredibly guilty for the fact that she didn't know it was that bad, because I'd not told her. And that's my fault. I'd not told her because she was there to listen. And I'd painted the picture and not allowed her to pick up a brush, really.
And I think there are probably people listening to this who can relate to that as well. What would you say then to someone listening to this who, was where you were, functioning, but not doing well at all under the surface, hasn't told anyone how they feel? What would you say to them, especially if they're considering this, that we talked about, this fork in the road? What would you say to them? I appreciate neither of us are therapists or professionals, but this is the power of this podcast is it's based on your own, recovery narrative and your experience.
I'm probably not wrong in saying that the majority of people that start to get into depressive thoughts, there's a trigger that's happened, and I'd probably be right in saying the majority of it is financial. It's pressure of too much going out the door and not enough coming in. I know there's a multitude of other reasons. It's divorces, it's this, that, and the other. But like my divorce and fighting for my kids, if I had a pile of money, an unlimited amount of money, maybe I wouldn't have been as depressed because I could have just dealt with it. So everything tends to boil back down to it's money. You know, what I have learned about money is that, okay, you can lose it all. So what? If you're here tomorrow, you got half a chance of making it back. It doesn't matter. Let it go. It's just money. And I know it's super easy to say where people think about their homes and they think about this and they think about that. But do you know what? If you address it quickly and you get on top of it, and I know that, again, that's easy when you're in a good state of mind. When you're in a bad state of mind, it's hard to do. But I would say to anyone, just stop. Just stop and take stock for a minute and just think that you're the most important thing here. It's not the house. It's not the car. It's not the Joneses that are looking at you going, oh, he's lost everything he has. He's really fucked up. Fuck him. It doesn't matter, because you can reinvent yourself a million times, and you can change track at whatever point you want to change it. And I'm a really big believer in that everything happens for a reason. And it's that whole, what is it, Romans 8:18, that, what the pain I feel today is that nothing compares to the joy I feel tomorrow. It's that whole, something's better around the corner, but you got to look around the corner to see it's there. So just keep going. Stop, take stock, think about it, and just take another step. Just be here another day, because something will change. Something will get better. Somebody will throw you a lifeline, even if it's financial. The bank will turn around and go, oh, do you know what? We're going to stop calling you. We're going to stop giving you shit. We're going to stop the interest on your account, so it's not going to get any worse. And if you went to the bank and told them, that's what they'd do. You do have a bit of power left. When somebody's banging at your door, okay, do you know what? Let them fucking have it. But just, you'll be all right. You will be all right. And I and this is again a plug. I'll often do LinkedIn posts, and I'll put, if somebody wants to talk. You got my name. I'll help if I can. I'll do what I can. Message me. I don't care. I'd prefer for somebody to be here another day than not, because they thought they couldn't talk to somebody.
Brilliant. Thank you, Graham. And I know you're not on here to plug your business, but if somebody wanted to buy just what is it called, so we can have a look?
Oh, do you know what? It's Vertical Sky, Vertical-Sky, because Vertical Sky was gone. Vertical-Sky. If somebody wants to reach out and say, look, I want to feel something, then reach out, because I was talking to a friend of mine who's actually a coach the other day, and we were talking about saying we should do a men's mental health climb. We should just, because my friend, he's had a whole change in life direction. He was a CEO of a business, and now he's become an extremely good life coach. And he was out in the forest the other week with a group of men doing exactly what we're talking about doing, going and talking to people and just being at one with each other and just being honest and open. And we were talking about saying, we should do something on the mountain. So if anybody's interested in doing that and bringing together a group of guys that have, had some troubles, want to find a different way out, then I am more than happy to accommodate them and do whatever I can to get them to feel better. So happily.
Brilliant. Okay. And you're right. I'll put your LinkedIn profile in the...
Yeah, go for it. And if anybody just wants to go, look, listen to your podcast, have you got half an hour to chat? 100%. No problem. I don't care. I'll listen to anybody. And we've said 10 times, we're not therapists. But if somebody's thinking, I've got no one to talk to, there you have.
Great. Well, you might well be inundated, Graham.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully. Look, thank you so much. I really want to thank you, because it's been, you've been really honest. And I think that's what the whole point of this podcast is about, is, men just sharing their experiences, but also how it can change. There is a way forward. So thank you for sharing that. Brilliant. Thanks, Graham.
No worries. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. If you want to contact Graham, you can find him on LinkedIn. Just search for Graham Noble. You can also visit his website, vertical-sky.com, if you want to find out more about his climbing Kilimanjaro experiences. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, then there are organisations you can call right now. For example, in the UK, you can call the Samaritans on 116 123. If you're in the US, you can call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And in Australia, call Lifeline on 131114. As always, the advice is to speak to a GP or a mental health professional. Finally, if you enjoy listening, then please do rate and review the podcast. It really helps, and also helps raise its profile and reach more people who might benefit from the stories shared by my guests.